Okay, I think most people are with us now. Bore da pawb, good morning, everyone. As always, a very warm welcome to this meeting of the Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales Network. We have another action-packed session, so thank you very much for making the time. And I think this is a particularly important session, and we're very grateful to have two speakers for us as well today. Because of the importance of us being able to start thinking about measuring impact and measuring the outcomes of what we're achieving. And we'll talk more about that as the session goes on. But essentially, that's at the heart of the session, which is how are we able to demonstrate the difference that we're all making across Wales to help people be digitally included. And so we have two speakers. We have Mair Rigby from the Wales Council for Voluntary Action and Rachel Benn, who's from 100% Digital Leeds. And they're going to kind of set the scene for us in outcome measurement in digital inclusion, which is then going to inform an opportunity for some questions to them, but then some breakout sessions for us to be thinking about, well, actually, what are we doing and how are we measuring it, and what could we do to really capture that? So I won't delay any further because I'm very keen for us to hear from our speakers. So if I could first introduce Mair Rigby. So she's the Governance and Safeguarding Manager for the Wales Council for Voluntary Action, and she's going to tell us a bit about measuring impact. So thank you very much, Mair. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Hamish. Diolch. Bore da, good morning, everybody. So I'm here this morning to introduce and hopefully inspire you to think about measuring impact. So the reason I'm here is that I, until last year, was involved in running a project called Inspiring Impact in Wales. The project has now finished. It finished in February 2022, but it's really, really nice to be able to bring a presentation to you this morning and kind of build on the legacy of Inspiring Impact. So I've got some slides for you this morning. Okay, so that should be displaying well.
Yep, perfect.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is going to be very much a whistle-stop tour to measuring impact. And obviously, this is a huge and complex area with many debates and discussions that happen. But hopefully what I'll do this morning is talk to you about the key principles and get you thinking about how you can measure impact. So I've called it How to Build an Impact Measurement Framework, which sounds a bit ambitious, but hopefully it should take you through the key steps. And what I want to say is I don't think you should get distracted by the fact that you're working on digital inclusion projects, because at the end of the day, with measuring impact, the principles should be the same for whatever you're doing, really. I mean, you will need to think about some things about how to apply it in a digital inclusion context, but the principles should be very similar. So I wouldn't get too distracted by that. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to pose a little question to you. What is impact? So let's see if you're awake. Let's pop some comments in the chat. What do we mean by impact, do you think? Going to find out who's had their coffee now, aren't we? The results of action taken. Thank you, Mike. The difference we are making. Brilliant. Measuring difference. Thanks, Gwyneth. Benefit change of your work, the difference we can make, change, absolutely. Fantastic. Making it, okay, so a lot of people are saying making a difference. Absolutely, I completely agree. That's right. Impact is the difference that your organization or project is making. And hopefully it's a positive difference. Some people have mentioned change, and you could also think about it as change. Some people say difference, some people say change. One of our trainers described it as the reason your organization gets out of bed in the morning, which I quite liked. It's like, this is it, this is our purpose, this is our motivation. These are the changes that we want to achieve. That's your impact, or the impact that you're trying to have. New Philanthropy Capital, which is an organisation which has a lot of really great resources on impact, so I'm going to link to some of their resources a bit later. They describe it as the sustained effect of an activity on individuals, families, and communities. That's one way of thinking about it. So in this context, when we talk about impact and we talk about difference and change, we are talking about something that is quite significant and longer term when we say the term impact. So this is very likely to be something that your organization is contributing to, but is very unlikely to be achieving in isolation. There will be other things happening, there will be other factors. So what you're going to be interested in is finding out what changes, what difference can be attributed to your organization's activity. And this is when it comes down to your outcomes, which have already been mentioned this morning. How are those outcomes leading to the impact that you want to have? So, as I mentioned, it refers to those bigger changes. You probably won't be achieving this alone. There will be other things happening in the space. But this does differentiate impact, that big kind of longer term goal, from your outcomes. And I like to give recycling as an example here. You know, recycling, that's an enormous social change that's happened over the last 30, 40 years, hasn't it? You know, I mean, if you think, you know, I grew up, if I remember back to, you know, the early 1980s when I was a child, and recycling was something, you know, nobody really did, and it was completely niche. Now it's completely normalized. And many, many organizations, many groups have contributed to recycling becoming something that is normalized. So they will have been part of that, but they didn't achieve it alone. So that's just something to think about. So another little question for you. Why do you think it's important to measure your organization's impact or your project if it's a project? Funding, says Becky. Absolutely. Thank you, Becky. That is a factor. Funders will very often want you these days to report on your impact. To secure funding, to change course if not having the desired impact. Thank you, Emma. Absolutely right. We all have an impact. We might not be having the impact that we think we're having. We could even be having a negative impact. Nathan, do we need to change? Impact measurement is very, very much about learning. Connor says, identify what is and isn't working, to demonstrate the importance of the work, to see what works, that your activity is achieving your purpose. Thank you. Some great things coming in there to the chat. So just a few things on this slide. I think you've captured most of them. Learning and continuous improvement, fundraising and income generation, assurance about the quality of your projects and services, and of course, public trust and confidence. Most of us here today are going to be in voluntary organisations and charities. We need that public trust and confidence. And, you know, our funders, our stakeholders, our beneficiaries expect us to be demonstrating a positive impact. And I like this quote from Jane Goodall, who says, what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. We are already having an impact. What we do has an impact. So, you know, we need to understand that. And as has already been mentioned, we need to make sure that what we're doing has a positive impact as well. You know, what we do can have, as I've mentioned, unintended and negative consequences sometimes. So, you know, when people say to me, should we measure our impact? Well, yes, because you're already having an impact, is what I would say. Okay, that's all very well, Mair, you might say, but where do we start with all of this? So I'll make some suggestions. The starting point should always be your organization or your project's purpose. So inspiring impact, the Resource Project, we always said, are you clear about your purpose? What difference do you exist to make? Are you able to explain your intended impact in meeting this purpose? And can you describe how you're going to create this impact plainly so that everyone can understand it? A really useful piece of guidance, which is a legacy of the Inspiring Impact project, is the Code of Good Impact Practice. It provides guidelines for focusing on impact. It sets out a cycle of good impact practice and some high-level principles to follow. So I really recommend having a look at that if you want to get started. It has 8 principles. Take responsibility for your impact and encourage others to do so. Focus on your purpose. Involve others in your impact practice. Apply proportionate and appropriate methods and resources. We'll talk a bit more about methods. Consider the full range of the difference you have actually made. As I've said, everything from the positive to the less positive. Be honest and open, and be willing to change and act on what you find, which quite a few people mentioned in the chat. And here's the cycle of good impact practice. It has 4 stages. plan the impact that you intend to have and how you're going to do it. Do the work, deliver that work, collect the information and the data that you need about it. Assess what you've done, make sense of that information, draw conclusions, and review. Communicate, so that might be in your impact report, for example, and learn from those findings and use them to improve your work. Something we sometimes say in impact practice is don't collect anything that you're not going to use and that you're not going to learn from. So what is impact measurement? There are debates about the term measurement. Some people don't like it and would prefer other terms, but I'm just going to use it for now as the term because it's one you will commonly see. Impact measurement refers to the methods you will use to find out whether your activity has made that difference and how big a difference it has made. And there's a link there to an article by James Noble at New Philanthropy Capital talking about impact measurement, what it means if you're interested. Going to sound a jargon alert now. So honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about the jargon. There's a lot of it in impact practice, as long as you know what you mean by things. But when we're talking about impact, we mean, as I said, that longer term, bigger changes, goal, aim, impact you might see. Shorter term changes, outcomes, results, outputs you might see, and what you do to bring about the activities, what you do to bring about the changes are your activities. And again, there's a little jargon buster there that I've linked to. So let's get serious now about building a framework for impact measurement. And New Philanthropy Capital have this quite useful diagram. So they lay it out in 4 pillars. Map your theory of change, prioritize what you're going to measure, choose your level of evidence, and select your sources and tools. And ultimately, this should hopefully result in an effective impact measurement framework being developed. The first stage is usually a theory of change. So this is a representation of the change your organization wants to make. It's usually represented in some kind of visual form, a diagram. It can be quite creative, which is one of the things that's nice about it, but it shows how you expect outcomes to occur over that shorter, medium and longer term, and how you want to show how your activities are going to lead to your outcomes, which are going to lead to your impact. So I've just got a little summary there. And it should also be something that can be scrutinized and tested. Perhaps the most important point here is that your theory of change should be a basis for attribution. And that is that case that it was your project, your activities that did make this difference. And that's obviously really important here. So the first question for you, if you're thinking about developing a theory of change, is what is the problem you are trying to solve or the question you are trying to answer? There should be something there. There's some question, there's some problem, there's some issue, something that you want to do something about and solve or answer. And what should be included in a theory of change? As I've just mentioned, that context, that issue, question, problem, your longer term goals, impact you are meaning to have, presumably something around digital inclusion in your context, outcomes. Those are those shorter or medium term goals, and these need to be measurable. The activities, which are what you are going to do to lead to those outcomes. NPC also includes mechanisms or sparks of change, and that really means that's more sort of qualitative. What is it about your activities that are going to achieve this change? And also you need to think about what assumptions you're bringing to it, because you may later want to go back and question some of those assumptions. And when you're developing a theory of change, you usually start with the impact and work backwards. So rather than going from the activities to the impact, here is a very most simple level theory of change. You can do it as just a nice little diagram, a nice little pyramid diagram, impact at the top, outcomes and activities with something about context and need. Here's one that's more complicated. You often see them like this with a series of boxes leading from activities to outcomes to impact. So this one is around young people doing better at GCSE maths. And one thing that's quite nice to include is the accountability line, which you can see there. And that's really the point at which you're saying we can measure our contribution up to this point. And then there's that line, because obviously how well a young person is going to do in GCSE maths you're not entirely in control of that. You've done your best, you've contributed what you can, but they might just be having a bad day or they might miss the bus. So, you know, it's about having that line to say, this is as far as we can go. I found one on digital inclusion for you. It's a little bit blurry, sorry about that, but I've included the link there. So if you do want to look at one that has been developed for digital inclusion, there's an example of a theory of change. So why is this useful? It provides you with focus, helps you identify what you need to measure. It can be represented nicely, creatively, simply, so something you can show. It brings that change process to the foreground, and it helps you make that stronger case for attribution, as I've already mentioned. Did we make a difference? Did we make this difference? And it creates that line of accountability, which helps you to identify the changes that you made, and then, of course, the bigger changes that you maybe contributed to, but can't control entirely. So I'm going to work through the other pillars now quickly. Your impact is likely to be diffuse, so it's important to prioritize the most important outcomes in your theory of change and focus on measuring those. Do not try and measure everything. That will be impossible. So think about what information is going to help you improve your work, what evidence is available, what do you want to use the evidence for, what resources have you got, be realistic, what can you allocate to this, what skills have you got available, and what is possible. Choose your level of evidence. What level evidence do you need to collect to find out whether you've achieved what you've set out to do? And can you capture data that shows positive change? I put a link there to the Nesta standards of evidence if you're interested in a bit more about different levels of evidence. NVC has produced a really useful guidance on what they call the 5 types of data. And this can just be helpful for thinking through what evidence and data you might want to collect. User data, which is the characteristics of your users. That's the people who are using your digital inclusion services or project. Engagement data, so that's the number of people you engage with and how often. Feedback data, that's asking people about how satisfied they are with what you do and what they would do to improve it. Outcomes data, this is about asking what difference your project has made to your users. And impact data, possibly the most difficult to collect. This is about trying to find out about the longer term impact your project has made. A bit depressingly there, it says, oh, this isn't possible. Well, it is possible, but it's not easy, is what I would say. So when we're talking about data and methodologies, we're usually talking about broadly 2 different things. Quantitative data, this is your numbers, how many people did things, can be quite quick and easy to understand, can be reasonably concrete, although, well, I won't get into debates about that right now. It can measure changes. And you have your qualitative data, which is your words. What did people think, feel? What difference did things make to them? How could things have been better? Helps you understand what is really going on, can reflect those complexities, and can really highlight how to improve. This quote you will often see around, no stories without numbers, no numbers without stories. So, and what this means really is the best approach is to collect both. Some methods, there are a whole range of different methods you can use for quantitative. There are loads of casework tools out there, surveys and questionnaires, quantitative scales, statutory data that already exists. I actually found an article which you might find useful from Catalyst on meaningful metrics for digital projects. So you might like to have a look at that. And in fact, in some ways, running digital inclusion projects and activities, you might even be a bit advantaged here because you are likely to have more data points. You may have access to actually more metrics than perhaps other kinds of activities might have. So maybe think positively about that. And your qualitative approaches can be interviews, they can be observations, they can be focus groups, they can be anecdotes and feedback, all of which can be carried out digitally, I would say. So in summary, an impact measurement framework is your approach to finding out about the difference that you are making. It involves defining the impact you want to have and how you plan to achieve this. Usually the starting point is a theory of change these days. Prioritizing what you're going to measure, choosing your level of evidence, deciding what sources and tools you are going to use. Just a few resources here. We have some resources on our website at WCVA. New Philanthropy Capital, as I've said, loads of things on there. The Legacy of Inspiring Impact project is on there, so definitely recommend having a look at their resources. Lots of free things if you're interested. Some evaluation tools, some links to some evaluation tools as well, and Evaluation Support Scotland are really good too. They have lots of tools and resources on their website, which are really practical. So definitely recommend them if you're looking for those kinds of things. So thank you very much. I'm aware that was a lot in a very short period of time. So I hope it was helpful, and I will hand back to Sarah.
Mair, that was extremely helpful. Thank you. Both the kind of theoretical underpinnings and also those frameworks you shared. Just to say, as always, we'll share the slides with participants in the call with all those really useful links. So thank you so much. You've set the scene very nicely, and it's a great pleasure now to introduce Rachel Benn. So Rachel is going to give us a kind of and on the ground some examples from the work that you're doing in Leeds. So a very warm welcome, Rachel, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Can everybody see me okay? I'm just going to share screen.
Yes, we can.
Great, might be a second. There we go. Right, hi everybody. I'm Rachel. I'm a Senior Digital Inclusion Officer on the 100% Digital Leeds programme. We're based in Leeds, as you can probably tell with the name. We're based within the Leeds City Council, and our role is leading digital inclusion for the city. So what we do is work on the ground with third sector organisations, supporting them to have what they need to best support the people they work with. So very similar to probably organisations like yourselves on the call. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and hopefully this should follow on really nicely from the earlier presentation, which was fantastic, to kind of delve a little bit deeper into some of those frameworks that Mair mentioned about how we can actually utilise those on the ground in your roles. And it's really kind of light touch as well, because working with third sector organisations and probably organisations like yourselves, really understanding that there's a lot of pressures on these organisations. So sometimes having that added pressure of evaluation, sometimes it's just thinking of practical ways to be able to capture that when you've got limited time and potential staffing pressures and things like that. So today I'm going to talk through some examples of just really good practice that we've helped third sector organisations utilise so that we still get that evidence, but being able to capture it in a really practical way on the day job when you're potentially delivering sessions or you're having those conversations with people. I thought I'd just do a minute just on a bit about who we are, if that's useful. So as I said, we work across the city. We're working to a vision that everyone in Leeds should have equal opportunity to use digital tools, technology and services in the right way for them. So we're really passionate about digital inclusion, as you can imagine. Within the evaluation support we give to third sector organisations, some of our kind of key objectives, which I'm sure are very similar to yours, are around obviously improving the digital skills and confidence and access for people within the areas that you're working in. So I thought I'd share that as a little bit of a context. So being able to support people to understand the personal relevance that digital can bring for their lives when we're thinking about how do we evidence that. Being able to support people to feel confident in their ability to engage with digital. Being able to think about how do we support people to have access to the things they need to be able to go online, and then absolutely having the digital skills as well to be able to do the things they want to do and the things that mean something to them as well. It's a very person-centered approach, and it's really about thinking what matters to people and what motivates them to go online. That's a bit about our programme. That's what we work to kind of achieve in Leeds. And as I say, we don't work directly with the people, we work with organisations. And we've developed a model which I can share. I'll share all the slides as well, which really supports third sector organisations on their digital inclusion journey, really thinking about what your offer looks like and how best you can actually build upon that offer, as Mair mentioned, maybe accessing funding and things like that. But conscious today is all about evaluation, so just starting with that, really wanted to kind of go into kind of identifying ways to measure success. I won't repeat what Mair said, but through the lens of some of those frameworks that you mentioned about the theory of change and why do we evaluate, these are some of the kind of reasons that supporting third sector organisations to evaluate digital inclusion initiatives has had really success. So why we want to do that is really being able to support organisations to demonstrate what's working and equally what's not as well. So that ongoing evaluation, that ongoing review of, is something actually working? What's the benefit for the people that you're working with? Which is really determining kind of supporting that further rollout as well. Probably like yourselves, a lot of our organisations, get funding, but it's always quite limited. So it might be like a 6-month project or a 12-month project. So really thinking about sustainability and really thinking about, before the end of that funding, have we actually demonstrated what's working and what's not? Also sharing wider as well. We have networks within the city that we really kind of share this stuff so people aren't reinventing the wheel. Being able to adapt to needs, so really ensuring the interventions are actually meeting the needs of the community. We're really passionate about co-production, so really involving people that are digitally excluded and have barriers to digital inclusion in some of this process as well, so that we can really understand that, is it meeting the needs? And actually looking at some of the evaluation methods, obviously, Mair mentioned quite a few, thinking about, is it the right one to capture actually what we want? Is it a practical one? Is it actually too time intensive that actually it's taken away from the actual activity? So I've been able to really look at the choice around the methods and think about, what's the best method to be able to capture that evidence, but equally, isn't it creating more and more work for people to be able to actually take away from the actual activity itself? Being able to share impact, so being able to share that, to be able to obviously get further funding, which was mentioned earlier, and absolutely being able to demonstrate that sustainability and longer term planning for further development. So yeah, just a little bit of repetition there, but just to give you an example of kind of those 4 areas that we kind of work with third sector organisations to really think about when we look at the why. And then I know theory of change has been mentioned, but we've got a digital inclusion one, which I thought might be useful to share, which is kind of the standard one that we use with all organisations, which is really simple. Sometimes evaluation methods, if it's not your kind of area of expertise, can feel a little bit daunting and a little bit complicated, and actually it doesn't have to be. It can be really simple. So actually we've found this kind of diagram, again I'll share all this, has just been a really simple way for organisations to really think about each of those areas and be able to kind of focus as well and really come back to those ideal outcomes and see whether, how that project is actually currently being developed. So just some examples, inputs, really thinking about, who's actually involved. So from our part, this is just an example one on one of our projects at the minute in the city. So thinking about, yourselves, your teams, is there any other partner organisations that you're working with that are also involved? Enablers, some of those things that are really going to enable the project to be delivered. So for us, that's kind of connectivity, having equipment, whether that's like tablets, laptops, smartphones, devices, accessing digital skills platforms like Digital Wings, Learn My Way, some of those online digital skills platforms, staff training, whether that's to be able to deliver the particular activity or digital skills training specifically for the workforce. And then other enablers, like you probably heard of the National Data Bank maybe, which the Good Things Foundation developed, to be able to gift data to people for free. So, that's a great enabler, thinking about that, what are those other offers from other organisations outside of your organisation that can really support your project. And then obviously funding, which you've mentioned, which is, a very common one when we're looking at kind of evaluation, because there's usually an evaluation framework attached to it, isn't it, with if someone's giving money on the table. And then output, this is just some of the examples of, some of that activity on the ground. It's not an exhaustive list, but some of the examples that we tend to see is that, setting up a session, that embedded skill support, that's a big focus for us at the minute with organisations, and it does tend to sometimes get forgotten about. It tends to be sometimes more focused on the actual digital sessions that, helping people with their digital skills, but actually some of that light touch support is just as valuable, you know, introducing some of the equipment into existing social sessions and, you know, ad hoc, you know, someone potentially just having a conversation and being supported there and then. So not just the specific sessions that are running like Tuesday 10 till 11, actually some of those other opportunities that are happening outside of those sessions. So really wanted that as important in there, because when we started looking at evaluation with organisations, initially some of that was not being captured because it's not a specific session, but actually still looking at where those opportunities are happening. And if it's on here, it's a reminder. Setting up a device lending scheme or a gifting scheme. So it might be something that you're doing or you're offering. And then absolutely looking at that full service offer. So how is digital inclusion embedded within the whole service? Not just, like I say, the sessions that are currently running. And then these are some of the main outcomes through digital inclusion that we've kind of focused on, which, you know, really come back to the kind of 4 main digital inclusion barriers around kind of motivation, skills, access and confidence. So really highlighting that, you know, improved digital skills and confidence of people, and that might be, you know, beneficiaries and the workforce as well. So really not kind of, you know, forgetting about the workforce, because a lot of the time sometimes we can focus on the beneficiaries, and actually there's some, you know, fantastic outcomes can come out of this around kind of the volunteers and the staff being empowered with their own digital skills, and not even just digital skills but maybe confidence, you know, being able to actually be empowered to help other people, and the, you know, the benefit of peer support. Improved access. So, you know, if that connectivity has been improved, or there has been obviously equipment that's been purchased or been put into that organisation, that people have greater access to actually access the internet, that more people can use the tools they want to use. Again, a big focus for us on this is do people know what tools are available. So we put that one in there, so that actually a big part of the evaluating is not just people using the tools, but actually knowing what tools are available. You don't know what you don't know. So a lot of the time, people don't know actually what they can do online. So it's a really good one to measure, to be able to see, you know, people's awareness of actually, and even perception of digital has changed through the process. Because a lot of people that have got no digital skills or might not be online, if we ask them now, you know, you want to go online, or however we phrase it, or, you know, you're interested in finding out a bit more, or just opening a conversation about digital, in their heads that visualization of what the internet is and what, you know, being online means is maybe different to me and you, because of, you know, we know it might be a FaceTime call to a family member, or it might be using an app that you really enjoy. But, you know, for a lot of people that aren't accessing digital, they haven't got that visual image. So being able to really, you know, have that in your outcomes is kind of to people's awareness and understanding of digital, has that improved? And then, you know, has there been better and easier engagement with service, so people had greater access to do the things they want to do online, or potentially need to do online, as we're seeing more services go online. So yeah, obviously regarding your project, everyone will have different outcomes, but they're some of the kind of main ones that we do try and you know, absolutely put into projects to really show that, you know, benefit of digital inclusion being increased and improved. And then variety of measures. I know we've heard quite a few different examples already, but yeah, these are just some examples that tend to be the most common around the digital inclusion project. So absolutely, you know, you've got your stats, you've got, you know, your number of people, I always say bums on seats or whatever, you know, people that are coming to the sessions, number of, you know, the actual equipment that's been loaned. That might not just be people that have actually accessed the device, it might be the accessing devices on site. So can you measure that? People that are coming in, maybe using laptops or equipment while they're in the building. Has there been anybody visiting them in their homes? A lot of our third sector organisations do home visits now, taking their own devices out, potentially it's like a tablet or a smartphone, and showing them the NHS app or something like that. So capturing that, they've had access to a device, it might not be their own, but they've engaged with digital today. So let's not, you know, miss that and capture that as well. The number of people using a particular tool, but for this example, we've done quite a bit recently on the NHS app, and people increasing their digital health participation, so we wanted to measure that. But it might be that if your funding is coming from a specific source, that you do need to know how many people are actually now signed up to the NHS app, or now using, you know, the bin app for us at the council, the big focus at the minute, whatever that tool is. So rather than just digital more generally, actually, they use that tool, and we're measuring that. The number of positive conversations. Now, this is a new one that we've added in. It sounds a bit strange, like, what's positive conversation? But for us, like with digital inclusion, and I'm sure because you're all working in this field, but people's journey isn't immediate. So it isn't a case of someone's told about something digitally and boom, they're on a session tomorrow at 10 o'clock. People need to get their head around it. They need to build that confidence. So a lot of it's seed sowing, like sowing the seeds. And we really wanted to kind of have that in evaluation to say, actually, every conversation matters. If someone is told about a tablet lending scheme, whether they say, yes, I'll have a tablet today, it's still important because they've been told about it. They now know about it. It might be they're having a really bad day. So today it's a no, but they know about it. So next week it might be that they do come in and actually, maybe say, I'd like a bit more information on that, or I was told about this last week. So we really want to capture those conversations and those interactions, because actually it might be that they access that support somewhere else, but that first initial conversation or that interaction is so important, and it's still sowing the seed. So that's a real important one for us, and I'll give you some examples of that in a minute, because again, it's just really showing that it's not an immediate journey for someone on a digital inclusion journey. Everyone's at a different pace, and it might be those seeds are sown 4 or 5 times before they can attend a session, just because of their confidence. But you want to be capturing that, because it's really important. If a staff member's telling someone about something or promoting the benefits of digital, it's really important to capture that. I've got an example of how to capture that as well, because that might be a question, because you got to think, well, how do I capture it in the middle of a conversation? Like, how am I haven't got a laptop to hand or whatever, but I'll get onto that in a minute. And then case studies as well, an obvious one, but absolutely warm, fuzzy feeling with digital inclusion. We know it's life-changing. We know it's absolutely impacting people's lives on such a drastic, scale, that, having those stories of just how much it's changed their lives is obviously, great. And we've got different examples of that. So we do kind of blogs on our website. I've put a link to our website, so you can have a little look if you want to use a similar template, which gives some examples of how it might be a bit of context setting around the current situation of the person, a little bit about their story, and then a little bit about their situation now, but then also kind of very small examples as well, so some different ways to collect case studies, so you can share that. But yeah, hopefully that's useful. That's just a little bit of an example of a theory of change that we've used. Drumming down a little bit deeper into that, we kind of split the barriers up and just gave some more examples of just actually how you can capture some of this stuff around the barriers. So thinking about, we want to show people's skills have improved. How might we capture that? So here's some examples. As I mentioned, people attending the one-to-one support, maybe attending group sessions, drop-ins, capturing the number of people using and having support to use digital tools. It might be on their own devices, but still being able to actually develop those skills, and also thinking about who is capturing this as well. We've really kind of looked at different organisations and who's the best person to capture this, because sometimes it can be the volunteer or the staff member in the session, but then there's somebody else in the organisation is like collecting all that up and putting that in a format like reporting format or a funding evaluation format. So thinking about who actually from your team is involved in this. We've really encouraged organisations to take a full organisation approach. Everybody can be involved, because sometimes when it falls to the person that's doing the digital session or whatever, it ends up being that you're missing elements of it because it's just those specific sessions. Support and connectivity, the number of people borrowing a device, number of people gifting device. We're just capturing the data now. So if you've got if you as an organisation want to sign up to the data bank, measuring that, looking at how many people are actually being gifted data, and then capturing the number of people, like I say, using equipment on site. And then the motivation one, so this is just some examples of actually how do we motivate people to go online. Let's capture this as well. So being able to capture the conversations that promote digital. So I'm telling people about the things they can do, the things that matter to them. Did you know there's an app that you can play snooker? Did you know there's you can order prescriptions, whatever that tool is. Being able to make people aware of that. The number of people engaging with digital in an embedded way. So that looks slightly different in different organisations. So just to give you an example, I was at an organisation yesterday. They've got a coffee morning of like 35 people over the age of 55, and they're all sat there having coffee, lemon drizzle cake, all the work, and they've got tablets in that session. So it's not a digital skills session, but they had music on the tablets, some jigsaw apps, some, just some really nice, enjoyable kind of game apps, really. And people, while they were there, were like, oh, I'll have a go at a jigsaw. So just looking at how many people actually engage in digital in that embedded session, we call it. So it's not everybody, all 35 might not have done, but there might be 4 that have had a go. So being able to measure that, because for some it might be their first time using digital, so we want to capture that. They're also really good ones as well. They're kind of where we harness our case studies. So they tend to be people that literally are having that first interaction with digital. So being able to kind of just make a note of that and think, there might be a good case study there, because it's that first interaction. You're starting at the start of the journey with the person. And actually, when we look, check back in, or we see these sessions in 3 or 4 weeks' time, actually the potential is going to be a journey there for somebody with their digital skills and confidence being developed, and just their awareness of actually what digital is. And then obviously for the base of our project at the minute, with the focus on health, this was just some examples of actually what we wanted to capture with regards to kind of using the NHS app, number of people using it, number of people booking appointments, what they were using it for, whether it's just accessing the care record or being able to actually just sign up to it. Using self-management apps has been a big focus, and then which GP practices they engage with as well, we captured that. So that's just some examples of like looking at the barriers and ways you can actually capture it. Obviously there are quite a lot of obvious ones, but hopefully there's just a couple there as well that aren't as obvious. Case study example, this was just, again, this is one of our smaller ones. So we have slides like this that we just basically just show a quote. This helps like with doing presentations, being able to kind of just go and talk to some of the funders and things like that, to be able to give them a snapshot on just some of the impact. This is one of somebody who, prior to going online and accessing the NHS app, was ringing up, lots of anxiety around that process, sitting on the phone for half an hour or whatever, trying to get through. And now this is the benefit, and also a little bit of context around their life as well. They're a carer, for someone that lives with dementia, they've got mental health, some of these other things that, really show the kind of, negativity of the situation they were in, and the absolute benefit, not just on the kind of efficiency now on actually being able to do it, but the benefit of their health as well in now actually using that tool, and reducing that anxiety. So really thinking about the wider benefits for that person, as well as just them saving time and doing things a little bit easier for them. So this is just a bit of an example of, they're like cards really. So chatting to some of the third sector organisations, and we were like, what's the most practical way for you to capture this? We've got food banks where people are on the food bank with a tablet and they're chatting to people at the food bank. We've got coffee mornings, as I mentioned. We've got, actual digital skills sessions. Any of those situations, you're not rocked up with a laptop and you're not sat there, 1 minute, I'll just put you on my sheet in the middle of the conversation so that I can capture you. You don't want to take away from that conversation. You don't want to take away from that session, but equally we need to know that you've actually supported those people. So some of the third sector organisations developed a bit of a card like this, and some of them are quite small, and they've just got them on them all the time, and they just do 5x8s. Nothing technical, nothing innovative, but it's just a really quick way that I think I've had a conversation with someone, I've told someone about a tablet lending scheme, there's 4 people there using the iPad in the session, there you go. And then being able to upload that to, a form on a laptop with a report and everything. But just for capturing some of those numbers, it's just a really quick, easy way to do it. And just to give you an example of just some of those things, so like I mentioned, if someone has had a conversation with someone that promoted digital, they told them the benefits it could bring for them. They're your typical conversation where people might be like, it's not for me, I'm not interested, or, and again, we know that's not necessarily the case. It might be because they're a bit fearful of it, or, had negative experience in the past. But again, if you're saying, did you know you could really save you time, or did you know did you know about this app? Or did you know, that this would really support you? You wouldn't need to ring up at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's you promoting digital, that's your staff promoting digital. And I think this is where it comes back to a whole organisation approach, because every single person in your organisation will be speaking to people potentially daily. That could be digital excluded, but they might not class themselves as a digital person because they're doing the, I'm just thinking of examples, but they might be doing the exercise class, or they might run the coffee line, or they might be doing the shopping for someone, or they might be on the desk. But absolutely, they could still be part of the evaluation, because they could still be in a role where they're actually promoting digital. So we want to capture that. Obviously, anyone that's attended sessions, as I mentioned, either the actual skills sessions or the embedded 5-bar gate, the promoting of the tools, as well as just promoting digital, using digital equipment on site, the one-to-one support sessions, attended a drop-in session, and completed a transaction. So some of those transactions that we wanted to measure, did they actually order a prescription, did they make the appointment, and we can track that. And then forms are handed to Nizam every week, who's Nizam at Hamara Centre. So just to give you a bit of an example of, some of you might be feeling it, where you think, gosh, the day's so busy, you are like, you're running from session to session, and you don't want to lose that opportunity to capture some stuff. So hopefully that might be a bit of a suggestion. Try it. If you could let me know if it works or whatever. But having a chat with your teams about what's the most practical way to do it, because that's how we got this card. Someone actually suggested, someone, I'll just do something just to jot it down, because I'm not going to have my laptop with me, and my memory's not going to remember all this. So just thinking of really quick, easy, practical ways that you can capture this on the ground while you're doing the activities. And that's me really. So like I say, my contact details are there. On our website, we've got some examples of that blog. We've also got a digital inclusion toolkit, which you can have a little look. There's some more in-depth information about how we've actually evaluated some of our projects, some of our actual evaluations of some of our projects. But I just wanted to do on the back of theirs, like that light touch around on the ground, how we're actually doing that. And hopefully that was useful and helpful. And I think if you've got any time for questions, I can always answer some questions, or I'll keep an eye on the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was brilliant. So we'll just take your slides down if that's okay. That's great. So we're a bit pushed for time, but I'm very keen that we have an opportunity to put any burning questions to Rachel and Mair while we have them with us. As that you've heard, they've both been kind enough to say we can share the slides and to follow up with them afterwards. And I know there are a number of people who want to follow up things from both. But any burning questions that people want to put to our two excellent speakers who've really set the scene nicely, I think. I'm going to, perhaps I could start, Rachel. We'd be, for other reasons, we'd be very interested to talk to you a bit about the data you're getting from the NHS app and repeat prescribing and things. And I know there are others on the call who would want to be talking to you about that, but we'll pick that up with you offline if that's okay.
Of course it is, and I didn't mention on that because obviously I've done more generic today, but also didn't mention in it, but also that there's data potentially that you can get from other partners. So it doesn't always have to be what you collect. With regards to the NHS work, we're actually working with our local primary care, because they're capturing stuff. So we're like, you're capturing stuff, we're capturing stuff, but they're capturing their percentage of patients that are engaging with their service digitally. So we've asked if, obviously not always, it can't be shared, for obvious reasons, but if they've got anything in this low level that they can share with us, again, just as an example, we're developing these organisations to support people with the tools. They're looking at their patient cohort, how many people are using the tools, actually marrying that up and being able to have their data is really useful, because there's some patterns there around where we're developing the organisations to obviously put the support in place. The practices engagement goes up. So also looking at, is there anybody else that's collecting any data at the time that you're actually delivering this project that is willing to share, because it might be that that'd be useful as well.
And I see Mair nodding at that. Is that your experience too, Mair?
I think it's just really a good idea to think about what data you have access to, and I just think that's a really good point, that partner organizations, other organizations may also be holding data that could be useful for you.
Fantastic. So you've both given us tons of stuff to think about. So thank you so much, and some really practical tips as well. And I know people will want to look at the links you've given us and think more carefully about it. And I'm sure they will want to come back to you. So I think what I suggested is we may move on now. But thank you so much indeed, both of you, for a really insightful and helpful and practical session. So thank you very much for your time. That's great and much appreciated. So, and as I say, we'll circulate both sets of slides and the various links and things afterwards, which I'm looking forward to having, I have to say. So I'm just looking to Sarah. We're just looking to just adjust the rest of the agenda to fit the time. What we're going to do is to effectively combine the two breakout sessions, and I can see Sarah's busy frantically typing in Zoom to make those changes. So I'm just looking to Sarah to see if we're ready to do that. Great. So what we're going to do is we were going to have a short session just really for people to talk about what you're measuring and what the barriers you're encountering are. That is really important, and we are keen to capture that. But rather than have a separate breakout session for that, what we're going to do is just to ask you to say a little bit about that as we go into what was going to be our second breakout session. And that is really intended to focus on what as an alliance should we be measuring. So we published our agenda, and then we republished it, the second edition, and we knew that it was always going to be challenging because a lot of what we were proposing was to be done by others, and we were encouraging and lobbying and supporting people to do other things. Some of it, of course, is stuff that we're doing, but some of it is being delivered through others. And we've heard a bit about that this morning already, the challenges of that. So we wanted to get your advice really on what you think we should be measuring as Alliance and how we might do that in practice. And hopefully the presentations we've just had now will inform that. Sarah, I'm going to hand over to you just to tell us what you would like us to do in this session. What was the slide? Excellent.
There is a slide. And I am doing what people always tell you not to do. I'm attempting two complicated things that I've never done before at the same time. So hopefully this is all going to work out. In terms of how we're going to capture the Alliance's impact, I've created a table that looks like this. There's one for all the different priorities. And I'm going to ask you, when you go into your breakout rooms, to try and put a few comments in here. I want to get your opinions on what this is, how it's going to work. So basically, just to break it down, there's the priority at the top. The outcomes that sit under that priority are there. And then there's 4 columns. So who DIAW needs to collaborate with. So these are the main actors. Who is the enabler, I think, as Rachel calls them. So who's going to be doing the thing? Actions we can take as an alliance, which might help that actor do those things. The measures of success of the outcome. So these are things that we can sort of tick off. Okay, that's happened, that's happened, that's happened. That means the outcome has been successful. And the last one is probably the most difficult of them. It's how do we measure how much influence and how much impact the alliance had on that success. So just as an example, this one is about raising awareness of digital inclusion and the national well-being goals. So obviously the people who would be involved would be the Future Generations Office, but also public sector organizations. Things that we as an alliance can do, create a publication of outlining how digital inclusion goes with the goals, meet with the Future Generations Commissioner, who's our ex-boss, so hopefully he'll take the meeting, and then promote the link. Just use what we do in terms of raising awareness and promoting that side of digital inclusion's contribution to the well-being goals. Measures of success, if the Future Generation starts promoting digital inclusion, And public sector organizations, so they have a duty to publish well-being objectives. So can they include digital inclusion as part of that? And then the how to measure DIAW's impact. We could look at whether the FG is doing what we asked, whether they're promoting our publication, but also looking at our own membership and making sure that they're doing what we think is probably a measure of success. These are just my ideas for this one. Obviously, I want to hear from you. That's the whole point of this. So now we get to the more complicated bit. We're going to use something called concept boards. So when you go into your breakout room, there will be a link in there, click on it, and it will take you to a website. You do not have to enter your email or register in any way. All you have to do is say, I want to be a guest. And then you just have to give yourself a screen name. You can make up any name you want. It's not, I'm not capturing who said what in any way. And you should be able to go straight into the board then and have a look at it, and it'll look just like the table I just showed you. Just a little instruction in the bottom left of the screen. You can zoom in and out on the table. And the easiest way to add your comments is to click the comment button. So if you're on a laptop or a computer, at the top, you'll see a bar of icons, and one of them is comment. If you're on a mobile device, you might only be able to see the little hand, in which case click on it and then comment will come up. You click wherever you want to put your comment and just start typing. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. The other complicated thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let you choose your own breakout rooms. So the breakout rooms are themed by the priorities. You can choose whichever priority you're interested in, you have ideas about, and you should be able to move between rooms as much as you want. So you just, if you're on a mobile, or if you're in full screen mode, you'll see a breakout rooms button appear when I hit open breakout rooms. If you're not in full screen mode, you might just see the more button, and you can click on the 3 dots and it will bring up a list, and you can choose breakout rooms, and then you just choose your room, and you should be able to change between rooms. If you do go to a new room, there will be a new link in the chat, and you'll have to change to that board. Does anybody have any questions?
Dear God.
I know. I'm being incredibly ambitious here.
Yes.
But I'm hoping it works.
Yeah. So the answer is, so the first thing is people need to choose a breakout room. When you're in there, log into the board and start filling in the board. Yes. And we need to crack on with it. So we'll do that.
We'll do that now. And yeah, remember to introduce yourselves, talk about what you're doing as well, but have a look at what the Alliance is doing. And join the board.
Yes, and join the board as a guest. Yes, don't try and log in and register, because it'll take all day.
Yeah.
And you're going to call us back at
about 20 past.
Yeah, so we've got about 15 minutes to do this. So brief introductions. Lovely. Excellent.
Right. So I'm going to hit open all rooms. You should see the breakout room button come up on the bottom. Click on which room you want to go in. If you have any trouble, I'll be in the chat sort of troubleshooting.
Excellent. That's a good start. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks very much. Huge kudos to Sarah for making that work. Very impressive. And for all of you for overcoming the technology. So that's great. I think we're not probably going to get people to feedback. There's so much information on those boards. What we're going to do is take the boards away, make sense of them, tidy them up, and then we can summarize those to you all in future. But what we would like to do just in the last few minutes is I'm going to ask Dan just to talk a little bit about what we would like you to continue to help us with in the network. So Dan, do you want to just take it from there? I can't see Dan. There's Dan.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. Can people see me, or is my camera not working?
Your camera's off.
Sorry, I don't think it's going to work. It's been doing this over the past few days.
Lovely.
If I appear, then great, but I'm sorry. So I'm just going to talk about the MDLS project. a little bit and a bit of a call for action for everyone in the group here. So the MDLS, you know, is an example of how the Alliance has had impact, you know, in policy development in Wales and on key partners, because it was one of the key asks in our agenda when it was published. Well, the first edition was published a few years ago, and then, you know, we've seen that work its way through the policy development process in Wales, and, you know, the Welsh Government consulted on it as part of its national milestones consultation. They, you know, did the research into it, and then have commissioned this new research team to do further work on exploring it in Wales. So that's Compass, the Good Things Foundation, Liverpool and Loughborough Universities, and Swansea University as well. And you know, that it's already had you know, outputs, and you can see the first report that came out a few months ago. And you know, we've already gained key insights in that, and you know, how to make the MDLS as effective as possible, and you know, begin to see what it looks like for certain families in Wales. So yeah, you can access that report. Actually, I'll put a link to that in the chat. You can access that now. Just put that in the chat for you. And now we're moving on to the second stage of the research, and you know, this is a real opportunity for the Alliance to really help out with this and get involved with this. You know, throughout the process of the research, the Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales has been identified as a really key asset. It's, you know, hugely beneficial to the research team in, you know, developing this research and, you know, effective policy. And you know, the Alliance fed into much of the initial research and interviews with stakeholders in the last report, and you know, it's hugely beneficial to get that at this stage of the research into an MDLS to make sure that it's going to be as effective as possible for policy development in the future. So yeah, well, I was going to say we're really keen to do that again, but it's not just that it's keen, it's, you know, it's essential for the success of the project that the Alliance is involved again. So we'll be doing stakeholder interviews again in terms of people who, you know, like the organisations that you work in, who would use this tool in the future, to make sure that it, you know, covers everything that it needs to cover and everything. So, you know, we've got those stakeholder interviews on one hand, and it'd be great if your organisations could get involved with that. There will be more information coming out about that in the future. But in addition to that, we're also looking to interview 6 families with children in Wales about their experiences of using technology, the challenges they face, and you know, what it means in their everyday lives. So identifying those families, you know, any help with identifying those families would be really, really useful. In terms of timescale, so I think we're basically looking to do it as soon as possible. But there's a weekend after next, so the 1st and 2nd of July, we're identified as one weekend that we could do it. Obviously, that's coming up very quickly now. So, but you know, if there are people, you know, who could get involved with this at that time, get in touch, and we'll try to make that happen. But more likely, it's going to be in 22nd to 25th of August. So yeah, we need to get this done as soon as possible. So if you could. Well, actually, just to go into a bit more detail about the type of families we're looking to recruit. So they have to live in Wales with children living at home between the age of 5 to 17, and you know, maybe discussing their challenges in digital access and use. There are specific sort of characteristics that we're looking for, which has been identified by the Welsh Government, which is at least one family living in rural or remote areas, households where a child or a parent has disability or limiting health condition, families living in social rented housing, Welsh speakers, or and households from minority ethnic communities, including migrant and refugee families. So if you, in your work with families who cover those characteristics, it would be really, really great for us if you could help us to identify them, possibly for as soon as the weekend after next, but also more likely to be in those dates in August. So again, I'll just put in the chat now my email. So if you do, if you think your organisation will be able to help out with this, get in touch, and we'll be able to send out more information as soon as possible. But that's sort of a brief overview and just an example of the call to action that we're going to get, and it would be really beneficial, and another example of how the Alliance can be a really useful asset. So yeah. Thank you very much for that.
Dan, thanks very much. Could I suggest that you might just want to summarize what the ask is? So the type of families, what you require, and so on, and maybe we could send that out to everyone as well, just as after the meeting, because there's a lot of detail in there. But it's really key, I think, that as an alliance we support this work. We've called for it, and you're by far the best people to help us identify those families. So if you could help, we'd be really grateful. That means we're just about out of time. It's been another cram meeting, but I hope you found it as interesting and helpful as I have. We'll send loads of stuff to you. We'll send the slides from the presentations. Sarah's going to make sense of the mood boards, the concept boards, and we'll circulate that to you in due course. That will take a little while, I'm sure. And Dan will send out also the call for the type of family we're looking for the minimum digital living standard research. And just to pick up the point in the chat is, yes, Welsh Government were minded to and have funded the second phase of the work based on the quality of and usefulness of the first phase. So thank you for all your help with that first phase as well. So thanks very much as always. Great engagement, and hopefully, as I say, you found it useful. And our next meeting is going to be end of September or early October, and date will come out in due course. So thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody, and see you again at our next meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.